August 17th, 1944. 14 to 23 hours. Northern France, 6 kilometers east of Falaise. Obergefreiter Wilhelm Hofmeister knelt beside the captured American truck, socket wrench in hand, and felt something inside him break, not the truck itself. The GMC CCKW sat there, canvas cover torn by shrapnel engine, still warm from whatever hasty retreat had left it behind. It was the number stamped into the chassis frame that made his breath catch. 147-293, production number, Pontiac Plant, number 1, year 1943. Wilhelm had worked at Opel Stuttgart for 4 years as a mechanical engineer specializing in production efficiency. He understood manufacturing capacity, throughput, production scale. He'd spent countless hours calculating how to squeeze another 5% efficiency from assembly lines, how to reduce waste, how to shave seconds off installation times. 147,293 trucks from a single factory in a single year. Germany's entire truck production, all manufacturers, all models combined, had totaled 75,000 vehicles last year. The wrench slipped from his grip, clanged against the chassis. Gefreiter Hofmeister, Gefreiter Dieter Wolfram, 19 years old, watched with concern. 3 months in the 276th Infantry Division's motor pool, fresh from training, still young enough to believe Germany could win this war. Wilhelm couldn't answer immediately. The mathematics screamed too loudly in his head. Brandenburg Opel, Germany's largest truck manufacturer, produced 18,000 vehicles per year at full capacity. All models, light trucks, medium trucks, the Blitz series. 18,000 when things were going well, before the bombing raids, before material shortages, before half the skilled workers were drafted to the Eastern Front. One American plant had produced more than 8 times that number, in 1 year, of one model. "Get Hauptmann Schneider," Wilhelm said quietly. "Tell him we need to examine this vehicle thoroughly." "Is it worth salvaging?" Wilhelm almost laughed. The boy had no idea what he was looking at. "Just get the Hauptmann, now." Dieter hurried away. Wilhelm turned back to the truck, his engineer's mind cataloguing details despite the growing dread in his chest. The GMC CCKW. Americans called it a deuce and a half, 2.5 tons rated capacity. It dwarfed the standard Opel Blitz. 6 wheels instead of 4. Model CCKW 353, the long wheelbase version according to markings. Wilhelm opened the hood, simple latches, no tools required, and stared at what lay beneath. The GMC 270 engine sat openly accessible, every component clearly visible. Inline 6-cylinder, 269 cubic inches displacement, 104 horsepower according to the specification plate, not impressive by German standards. The Opel Blitz produced 75 horsepower from a smaller engine, more refined, more efficient. The GMC engine looked almost crude in comparison. Heavy casting, simple design, nothing elegant about it. But then Wilhelm noticed something that made his throat tighten. Every bolt head was the same size. He traced the engine with his eyes, testing fasteners at random with his wrench. Valve cover, exhaust, manifold intake, assembly, motor mounts. Every single bolt fit the same tool. The Opel Blitz required 6 different wrench sizes just for routine maintenance. Required skilled mechanics who'd spent months learning the intricacies of the fuel system, the timing mechanisms, the precise tolerances that made German engineering excellent. Mechanics Germany no longer had enough of. Wilhelm moved to the toolbox mounted on the running board. Inside, standard wrenches, pliers, screwdrivers, nothing exotic. And there, printed on quality paper despite wartime shortages, was a maintenance manual, 48 pages, fully illustrated. Every procedure explained with simple line drawings showing exactly how to perform each task. Oil change, 4 steps, each one pictured. Spark plug replacement, 3 steps with diagrams. Carburetor adjustment, a simple chart, no complex calculations. The Opel Blitz manual ran 186 pages of dense technical text, assuming substantial mechanical knowledge. "A child could follow these instructions," Wilhelm muttered. He heard boots approaching and looked up to see Hauptmann Friedrich Schneider walking toward him. 42 years old, former production manager at the Opel plant in Brandenburg. Before the war, Schneider had been held back by peacetime bureaucracy. The war had given him a chance to prove his worth. More importantly, he understood manufacturing in a way most officers didn't. "Dieter said it was urgent," Schneider said, then stopped when he saw Wilhelm's face. "What's wrong?" Wilhelm stood, gestured toward the chassis number, then handed Schneider the maintenance manual. Schneider looked at the number. His expression didn't change immediately. He was good at controlling reactions, but Wilhelm saw the moment of recognition. The slight widening of eyes, the pause in breathing, the way his fingers tightened on the manual. "One plant," Wilhelm said quietly. 1 year. 147,000 units. Based on the contract number, they were scheduled for 165,000 total. Schneider said nothing. He opened the manual, flipped through it with the careful attention of a man who'd spent decades in manufacturing. Page after page of clear illustrations, simple instructions, standardized procedures. Our entire production, Schneider finally said, his voice carefully neutral, across all manufacturers, all models. We managed approximately 75,000 trucks last year. I know. If one American plant can produce twice what all of Germany produces. I know, Friedrich. Schneider closed the manual. He walked to the engine, examined it as Wilhelm had done, tested the bolts, checked the accessibility of components. His face remained professionally calm, but Wilhelm could read the signs, the slight tension in the jaw, the fractional pause between observations. We need to test this vehicle, Wilhelm said. Properly. Why? Because I need to know if I'm right. Right about what? Wilhelm looked toward the east, where smoke still rose from yesterday's bombardment, where their division was retreating day after day, losing ground they'd taken years ago. Right about the fact that we've already lost this war. Schneider was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded once, sharp and military. Get it running. Take Dieter with you. I'll authorize a field test tomorrow morning. That evening, Wilhelm and Dieter worked on the GMC by lamplight. Shrapnel damage to the fuel line, nothing serious, easily repaired. Wilhelm showed the younger man how to trace the damage, how to patch it, using standard tools and materials from their own supply stores. Dieter worked with careful enthusiasm, eager to prove his competence. 3 years of training, first at technical school, then in the Wehrmacht motor pool program. He was good at his job, precise and thorough. It took him 12 minutes to locate the damaged section and remove it. Now what? Dieter asked. Wilhelm handed him the GMC manual, open to the fuel system page. Follow the instructions. Dieter frowned at the illustration. It seems simple. It is simple. That's the point. The repair took another 20 minutes. No specialized tools required. No complex procedures. The fuel line, connected with standard fittings, held in place by simple clamps. When Dieter finished, he looked almost disappointed. That's it. That's it. But on the Opel we have to... I know what we have to do on the Opel. I helped design some of those systems. Wilhelm closed the hood. The question is, which approach wins a war? Dieter didn't answer. He was young, but he wasn't stupid. He could do the mathematics as well as Wilhelm could. They got the truck running just after dark. The engine caught on the second try, settled into a rough but steady idle. Not refined like German engines, not quiet, but it ran and it would keep running. Wilhelm sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, feeling the vibration through the steering column. The interior was Spartan. No unnecessary features, no comfort considerations. A tool for war, nothing more, and nothing less. He thought about the Opel Blitz with its carefully designed driver's compartment, its attention to ergonomics, its sophisticated suspension. Beautiful engineering, pride of German craftsmanship, and completely inadequate for what was needed. The next morning came grey and cold. Wilhelm drove the GMC while Dieter followed in one of their division's Opel Blitz trucks. Schneider rode in the Opel's passenger seat, taking notes. The test route led through typical French countryside paved roads, deteriorating into gravel, giving way to dirt, becoming mud, where recent rains had turned the ground soft. This was the reality of war, fighting over terrain, never designed for military traffic over roads, never meant to carry this weight. The paved section was unremarkable. Both trucks performed adequately. The GMC rode rougher, that crude suspension Wilhelm had noticed, but acceptable. The gravel was where things began to diverge. The Opel, with its sophisticated torsion bar suspension, handled the uneven surface better, more comfortable, more stable. Then they hit the mud. The dirt road had been churned by tanks 2 days ago, then soaked by rain. Deep ruts, standing water, the kind of terrain that swallowed vehicles whole. Wilhelm downshifted, engaged the transfer case, a single lever, beautifully simple, and felt all 6 wheels bite into the mud. The GMC lurched forward, not gracefully, not smoothly, but forward, pulling through mud that came halfway up the wheel wells, powering over ruts that would have high-centered a smaller vehicle. Behind him, Wilhelm heard the Opel's engine rev higher, then higher still. He stopped the GMC and got out. The Opel Blitz sat 200 meters back, rear wheels spinning uselessly in the mud. Only the rear wheels driven. The front wheels sat there dead weight while the rear tires dug themselves deeper into the mire. Dieter climbed out of the cab, his face flushed with embarrassment. Schneider stepped down more slowly, his expression thoughtful. The six-wheel drive, Schneider said. It wasn't a question. Wilhelm nodded. 6 driven wheels, weight distributed across all of them. Torque split between 3 axles instead of 1. The Opel could never make it through this. No. Dieter looked between them, confused. But the Opel has superior engineering, better suspension, better fuel efficiency. Better doesn't matter if it can't reach the battlefield. Wilhelm interrupted, his voice harder than he'd intended. He softened it. Dieter, how much training did you receive on the Opel's torsion bar suspension? 3 weeks. How long to repair it if it breaks? Depends on the damage. Could be a day, could be 3. Requires lifting equipment, specialty tools. Wilhelm gestured at the GMC. This has leaf springs. Crude, simple. 19th century technology. He paused. If one breaks, you can hammer it straight with a rock. The silence stretched. Wilhelm watched Dieter process this, his young mind struggling with implications. The boy had been raised on stories of German technical superiority, on the belief that precision engineering and skilled craftsmanship were the keys to victory. He was watching that belief crumble in real time. We'll need to pull the Opel out, Schneider said. They used the GMC to pull the Opel free, another small indignity, another lesson. Then they continued loading both trucks with sandbags until they exceeded rated capacity. The Opel, designed to carry precisely 3 tons, struggled under 4. The engine laboured, the transmission complained, the whole vehicle felt strained, pushed beyond design parameters. The GMC, rated at 2.5 tons, carried 4 tons without seeming to notice. The engine note changed slightly, became a bit rougher, but nothing suggested particular stress. They designed for abuse, Schneider observed. Wilhelm nodded. They assumed soldiers would overload it, neglect maintenance, drive it poorly, so they built it to tolerate that. We assumed soldiers would follow specifications, maintain proper procedures, respect equipment limits. Which assumption matches reality? Theirs. They returned to camp that afternoon. Wilhelm parked the GMC next to the motor pool's Opel trucks, and the contrast was stark. The German vehicles looked sophisticated, well-designed, the product of skilled engineering. The GMC looked like exactly what it was, a tool built for a specific job with no pretensions toward elegance. But it worked. In the mud, under load, with minimal maintenance, it worked. That night, Wilhelm lay awake doing mathematics he didn't want to complete but couldn't stop. 147,000 trucks from one plant in 1 year. How many plants total? 510. Even conservatively, 5 plants at similar capacity meant over 700,000 trucks per year from GMC alone. Then add Chevrolet Studebaker Dodge International Harvester. Germany's entire automotive industry, pushed to maximum wartime capacity, produced perhaps 100,000 military vehicles annually across all categories. Trucks, cars, motorcycles, everything. The numbers were obscene, impossible. And yet he'd seen the evidence stamped into that chassis frame. 147,293. A number that didn't lie, couldn't be propaganda, simply was. Wilhelm got up, pulled on his jacket, and walked to where the GMC sat in darkness. You weren't supposed to be the superior vehicle, he said quietly. Just the adequate vehicle, in overwhelming numbers. That was the genius of it. The Americans hadn't tried to build the best truck. They'd built a good enough truck, then built hundreds of thousands of them. They designed for their actual strategic situation a massive industrial base, millions of conscript soldiers who needed simple equipment and supply lines stretching across oceans. Germany had designed for the war. They'd wanted to fight short, decisive campaigns where quality and speed mattered more than quantity, where skilled German soldiers using superior equipment would achieve quick victories before logistics became decisive. But the war hadn't cooperated. It had dragged on year after year, consuming vehicles faster than even Germany's vaunted industry could replace them. Willi Hauptmann Schneider appeared through the darkness. Couldn't sleep either, Wilhelm asked. I did some calculations, Schneider said, based on what we know about American industrial capacity, automotive plants, steel production, trained workforce. And if they're producing trucks at the same ratio across all manufacturers, I estimate somewhere between 2 and 3 million military vehicles over the course of the war. Wilhelm felt something cold settle in his chest. 3 million. Perhaps more. My estimates are conservative. We have maybe 3 million horses across all fronts, for all logistics, all transport. I know. Horses that need food, water, rest, that can travel 30 kilometers a day in good conditions, that die by the thousands every winter. I know, Willie, I know. They stood there, 2 engineers staring at a captured truck, understanding what it represented. Not just a vehicle, an entire philosophy of war, an approach to industrial conflict that Germany had never fully grasped. What do we do? Wilhelm asked. Schneider's laugh was bitter. Du, we're Obergefreiter and Hauptmann in a Wehrmacht division that's retreating across France. What can we do except keep fighting, keep maintaining our vehicles as best we can, and hope that someone higher up understands what we're facing? And if they don't, then we learn these lessons the hard way, like we're doing now. Wilhelm thought about the production number. 147, 293. Just one number stamped on one truck captured by chance on one August day. But that number told a story larger than any battle report, more significant than any tactical briefing. It told the story of why Germany was losing. Not because German soldiers weren't brave, not because German equipment wasn't well designed, not because German tactics weren't sophisticated, but because German industry couldn't compete with American industrial capacity, because German engineering philosophy prioritized perfection over producibility, because Germany had prepared for the wrong kind of war. Tomorrow I'm writing a report, Schneider said. Full technical assessment of this vehicle, production capacity analysis, strategic implications. He paused. It won't change anything, but it needs to be documented. I'll help. I know you will. After Schneider left, Wilhelm remained with the GMC. The night was quiet, except for the distant sound of artillery, always there, now, always rumbling somewhere on the horizon, getting closer every day. The number echoed in Wilhelm's mind as he walked back to his tent. 147, 293. He'd seen the future, and Germany wasn't in it. Not the Germany he'd known anyway. Not the Germany of precision engineering and technical superiority and proud craftsmanship. That Germany had died somewhere between the factories of Detroit and the assembly lines of Pontiac, between the theory of short victorious wars and the reality of sustained industrial conflict. The GMC had taught him that. A simple truck built by workers he'd never meet in a factory he'd never see for an army that would eventually crush everything Wilhelm had believed in. But the lesson was real. The lesson was true. And Wilhelm Hofmeister, 35 years old, Obergefreiter in the 276th Infantry Division, former mechanical engineer from Stuttgart, would carry that lesson forward into whatever came next, even if he didn't yet know what that would be. September 3rd, 1944. 2 weeks of controlled retreat that felt less controlled with each passing day. Wilhelm Hofmeister stood in the motor pool at dawn watching mechanics prepare vehicles for another day of withdrawing from positions they'd held since the summer of 1940. 4 years ago they'd advanced through this same countryside as conquerors. Now they limped back as a broken army, and everyone knew it even if no one said it aloud. The GMC sat among the German vehicles integrated into the division's operational fleet after Wilhelm's report. A practical decision. They needed every vehicle they could get. Dieter Wolfram emerged from the supply tent, clipboard in hand. The young soldier moved differently now than he had 2 weeks ago. Something in his posture had changed, a kind of heaviness that came from understanding too much too quickly. Gefreiter Hofmeister, Dieter said, we have assignments. 3 Opel trucks for the morning supply run to the field hospital at Chateau Thierry, plus the GMC. Cargo, medical supplies, plasma bandages, surgical equipment. 4 tons total split among 4 vehicles. Wilhelm did the arithmetic automatically. Load the GMC with 1.5 tons. Dieter's pencil paused over the clipboard. That's more than its rated capacity. Its rated capacity is what the Americans tell conscripts. Its actual capacity is higher. They build in safety margins because they assume soldiers will overload it. The convoy departed at 06:30. Wilhelm driving the lead, Opel, Dieter in the GMC, 2 other drivers in the remaining trucks. 60 kilometers to Chateau Thierry through increasingly damaged countryside. Shell craters pocked the fields. Burned-out vehicles sat like metal tombstones along the roadside. The first 20 kilometers were paved, or had been once. Now the road was a patchwork of asphalt and gravel bomb damage, filled with whatever materials were available. The convoy maintained steady progress, though the Opel truck's sophisticated suspension systems worked overtime to smooth out constant jolts. Behind them, the GMC bounced and rattled over every imperfection, its crude leaf springs transmitting every bump directly to the chassis. Uncomfortable. Unsophisticated. But nothing broke. At kilometer 38, they turned onto a secondary road that had deteriorated into churned mud from tank treads and rain. Deep ruts, standing water, the kind of terrain that swallowed vehicles whole. Wilhelm stopped his truck, got out, and walked forward to assess the situation. The mud stretched for perhaps 200 meters. Corporal Hermann Vogel, 41, a truck driver before the war, joined him. We'll need to winch through, one at a time. Could take 2 hours. Wilhelm looked back at the GMC where Dieter sat watching with youthful impatience. Or we could see if the American approach works better than ours. He walked to the GMC, leaned in through the window. Dieter, drive through that mud. Don't slow down, don't stop, just maintain speed and keep the wheels turning. Gefreiter, if I get stuck. You won't. Trust me. Dieter's face showed doubt, but he nodded. The GMC's engine revved and the truck surged forward. It hit the mud section at 30 kilometers per hour. The front wheels plowed through standing water, sending up spray that coated the windshield. The middle axle grabbed and pulled. The rear wheels powered the whole assembly forward. 6 driven wheels sharing the work, distributing the torque so that no single axle had to do all the pulling. 200 meters of terrain that would have required careful winching, and 2 hours of work crossed in 90 seconds. Dieter stopped on the far side and shouted back, "How do we get the Opels through?" Wilhelm looked at Vogel. Both men stared at the mud, then at their own trucks with their elegant 2-wheel drive systems. "We winch," Wilhelm said quietly, "like we always do." It took 3 hours to get all 3 Opel trucks through the mud section. They used the GMC as an anchor point, running cables back and pulling each vehicle through one at a time. When they finally resumed the convoy, Vogel pulled alongside Wilhelm at a rest stop. "That truck," Vogel said, nodding toward the GMC. 6-wheel drive." "Yes." "Why don't our trucks have that?" Wilhelm had been asking himself the same question for weeks. "Because 6-wheel drive is less efficient on good roads, uses more fuel, more complex to maintain. Our engineers designed for European highways and well-maintained routes. And the Americans? They designed for France after 4 years of war. For Russia? For North Africa? For reality." Vogel was quiet for a moment. He'd been driving trucks since 1928, had more practical experience than most engineers. "We designed for the war we wanted. They designed for the war they had." "Yes." They reached Chateau Thierry 3 hours behind schedule. Wilhelm delivered his cargo, then found Dieter supervising the unloading of the GMC. The young soldier's uniform was caked with dried mud, his face streaked with dirt. But he was smiling for the first time in weeks. "Gefreiter," Dieter said, "I need to tell you something." "Go ahead." "I've been maintaining vehicles for 3 years. I thought I understood how they worked, what made them good or bad." He gestured at the GMC. "This truck has taught me more in 2 weeks than 3 years of training." "What has it taught you?" Dieter's smile faded. "That everything I learned was designed for a different war." Wilhelm clapped him on the shoulder. "Welcome to reality, Dieter. It's disappointing, but at least it's true." That evening, back at camp, Wilhelm sat in his tent with the GMC maintenance manual open before him. He'd been studying it systematically, trying to understand not just the individual components, but the philosophy behind them. The oil change procedure occupied 2 pages with clear illustrations. 7 steps, 12 minutes for a trained mechanic, 20 minutes for a complete novice. Wilhelm pulled out the Opel Blitz manual. Oil change procedure, 9 pages of dense technical text. Required tools, 6 specialized implements. Safety procedures, 3 pages. Access requirements, removal of protective panels. Complex drain sequence to prevent airlocks. Filter replacement requiring specialized wrench and precise torque specifications. Estimated time 45 minutes to 1 hour. Requiring trained mechanic with specialized tools. In field conditions, often impossible. The difference wasn't just complexity, it was philosophy. Opel had designed their oil change procedure for factory conditions with trained technicians. GMC had designed theirs for a muddy field in France with a 19-year-old farm boy from Kansas who'd received 2 weeks of basic training. Both approaches made sense in context, but only one context matched the reality of war. Wilhelm Hauptmann Schneider ducked into the tent. He looked tired. They all looked tired these days, but his eyes held sharp intelligence that exhaustion hadn't dulled. "I've been reviewing your maintenance logs," Schneider said. "The GMC has operated for 380 hours since we captured it. 2 weeks of daily use under combat conditions." "Yes, Herr Hauptmann." "In that time it has required 2 oil changes, 1 fuel filter replacement, routine greasing of fittings, and 1 tire repair. All performed by Dieter with minimal supervision." "Dieter could have done it with 3 days of training. The manual explains everything clearly enough." Schneider sat on the camp stool, pulled out his pipe. "I've also been reviewing our Opel maintenance logs for the same period. 12 vehicles, same 2-week period, same combat conditions." Wilhelm waited. "We've had 4 transmission repairs, 3 suspension failures, 2 engine overheats, 6 electrical malfunctions, and 1 complete engine replacement. The Opels are older. The GMC is a 1943 model. Our newest Opel is from 1942. Age isn't the factor." Schneider lit his pipe. "The factor is tolerance. The Americans designed their truck to tolerate abuse. We designed ours to require care." Care that's impossible to provide in combat conditions. Exactly. Schneider pulled a folded paper from his jacket. I received this today. Intelligence report from the Eastern Front. A Panzer division captured several American-made trucks being used by Soviet forces. GMC and Studebaker models delivered through Lend-Lease. And the trucks had been in Soviet service for 8 months. Minimal maintenance. Operators who barely spoke Russian, much less English. Driven through conditions that would destroy most vehicles. He paused. They were still operational. Some had over 2,000 hours of use. Wilhelm thought about the production number. 147,293. Multiplied across how many factories? How many millions of trucks built to this same philosophy of robust simplicity? They're not building superior vehicles, Wilhelm said slowly. They're building adequate vehicles that don't require superior operators. Yes. Which means they can field an army of millions using conscripts who receive minimal training. Yes. While we require skilled specialists for everything from vehicle operation to maintenance to repair. Yes. Wilhelm stood, walked to the tent opening, looked out at the motor pool. Even in darkness, he could see the shapes of vehicles, Opel trucks, Kübelwagens, motorcycles, each one a small masterpiece of German engineering, each one requiring skilled operators and mechanics, each one becoming harder to maintain as those skilled personnel were killed or captured or simply worn down by years of war. How many trained mechanics do we have left in this division? Wilhelm asked. 42. We started with how many? 218. And the Americans? Schneider's laugh was bitter. They don't need trained mechanics. Not the way we do. They need men who can read a manual and turn a wrench. Any conscript can learn that in a week. The implications spread through Wilhelm's mind like cracks in glass. Germany's automotive industry was excellent, perhaps the best in the world. But excellence meant complexity, and complexity required expertise. And expertise took years to develop. America had solved this problem by removing the requirement for expertise. They designed systems that ordinary men could operate and maintain with minimal training. Not because American soldiers were less capable, but because American engineers understood that in total war, you couldn't count on having the best trained personnel for every position. September 28th, Schneider said quietly. 4 days from now. We're expecting another withdrawal order, probably another 100 kilometers east. And the vehicles, we'll lose more. We always do. Mechanical failures, fuel shortages, air attacks. He drew on his pipe again. The Americans will keep advancing. They'll keep their trucks running. Their supply lines will follow them like a river, constant and unstoppable. Wilhelm turned back to face him. You're telling me this for a reason. Tomorrow we're capturing another American vehicle, a Dodge model, different manufacturer. I want you to examine it. I want to know if what we've learned from the GMC applies across their entire vehicle fleet. You think it does? I know it does, but I need confirmation, documentation. Schneider stood. Because when this war ends, and it will end, Wilhelm, we both know how someone will need to explain what went wrong. Someone will need to understand the lessons we learned too late. The next morning, September 28th, they captured the Dodge WC-63. Different manufacturer, different model designation. But when Wilhelm opened the hood, he found an engine that could have been the GMC's sibling. Simple, accessible, standardized. Wilhelm spent the entire day conducting experiments. He pulled a carburetor from the GMC. It fit the Dodge with minor adjustment. He tested electrical components. The voltage regulators were interchangeable. The spark plugs, same specification. The tires, identical size, 9.20 standard across both vehicles. By evening, he had a list of 23 components that were either identical or compatible between trucks from 2 different manufacturers. Hauptmann Schneider studied the list, his expression grave. One standard, he said. Multiple manufacturers. Complete interchangeability. Yes. Which means their logistics system can supply any vehicle from any depot. Any mechanic can service any truck. Parts inventory is simplified. Training is unified. Wilhelm nodded. Meanwhile, we have over 100 different vehicle types in Wehrmacht service, each requiring specialized parts, specialized training, specialized maintenance procedures. It's not just inefficient. Schneider set down the list. In total war, it's insane. Changing it would require redesigning our entire automotive industry. Standardizing specifications across dozens of manufacturers, each with their own traditions and methods and pride. It would require years. We don't have years. We don't have months. They sat in silence. Two engineers understanding the scope of a problem that couldn't be solved, not with the resources and time available, not while the Americans rolled forward in their endless standardized fleets. September turned to October. The division continued its retreat, losing vehicles to mechanical failure almost as fast as to enemy action. Wilhelm kept the GMC running through careful maintenance, following the simple procedures in the manual, marveling at how something so straightforward could be so effective. And then came the order no one wanted, but everyone expected. December 16th, 1944. Ardennes Offensive. Hitler's last gamble in the West. The briefing room was crowded with officers and senior NCOs. Wilhelm attended as the division's chief motor pool mechanic, standing in the back, listening as the operational plan unfolded. Attack west. Break through to Antwerp. Cut off Allied supply lines. Force a negotiated peace. But it was the logistics section that made Wilhelm's blood run cold. Fuel supplies are limited, the operations officer explained. Each vehicle will carry maximum capacity. Additionally, we are authorized to capture and utilize American fuel stocks whenever possible. All captured vehicles, particularly American trucks, are to be integrated into our logistics system immediately. They are considered high-priority assets. Capture enemy fuel. Use enemy trucks. After the briefing, Wilhelm found Schneider outside smoking in the cold December air. This offensive, Wilhelm said quietly. It depends on capturing American supplies. Yes. Their fuel, their vehicles, their equipment. That's not strategy, Herr Hauptmann. That's desperation. I know, Wilhelm. I know. Dieter appeared from the darkness, his face pale in the moonlight. The boy, not a boy anymore, Wilhelm corrected himself. A soldier aged beyond his years held a manifest. They want me to drive the GMC in the offensive, Dieter said, his voice flat, because it's more reliable than our trucks. The Ardennes offensive lasted longer than Wilhelm expected, and shorter than Hitler hoped. The initial breakthrough succeeded. German tactical excellence still counted for something, but within days the advance stalled. Not because of American resistance, though that was fierce, not because of the weather, though it was terrible, but because the fuel didn't arrive. The supply convoys couldn't keep pace. The captured American stocks weren't where intelligence said they'd be, and one by one German tanks and trucks ran dry, sitting immobile while American forces regrouped and counterattacked. Wilhelm watched it happen from the motor pool. Watched as panzer divisions reported vehicles abandoned for lack of fuel. Watched as infantry units resorted to horse-drawn wagons because their trucks had broken down and no replacement parts existed. Watched as the entire offensive ground to a halt, not from enemy action, but from logistical collapse. Meanwhile, American supply operations continued with mechanical precision. Their trucks kept running. Their fuel kept flowing. Their logistics system, built on standardized vehicles and simplified maintenance, proved impossible to disrupt for long. On December 26th, 10 days into the offensive, Wilhelm stood in a field watching a column of American trucks pass on a parallel road. He counted for 30 minutes and stopped when he reached 400 vehicles. 400 trucks. In 30 minutes. All identical. All moving with mechanical precision toward the front. Dieter stood beside him, silent. When we first saw the Red Ball Express, Dieter finally said back in August, I didn't understand what I was seeing. None of us did. I understand now. The young soldier's voice was tired. They built an army powered by logistics, and logistics that can't be stopped. Wilhelm said nothing. There was nothing left to say. The GMC still ran after months of hard use, still reliable despite minimal maintenance, still proving every day that adequate engineering in overwhelming numbers beats superior engineering in insufficient quantities. Everything Germany wasn't. Everything America was. They walked back toward their vehicles, 3 Opel trucks, 1 GMC, a handful of motorcycles. All that remained of a motor pool that had once numbered 30 vehicles. Wilhelm looked at the GMC one last time before walking away. We keep learning, he said quietly. Just always too late. The truck sat silent among the ruins, patient and inevitable, a teacher that never stopped instructing even when the students had stopped listening. April 18th, 1945, the Rhineland. The 276th Infantry Division no longer existed as a fighting force. What remained 300 men from a unit that had once numbered 12,000 stood in a muddy field surrounded by American soldiers. The surrender had been negotiated the previous evening. No grand ceremony, no dramatic speeches, just exhausted men laying down weapons. They no longer had ammunition for accepting the inevitable with quiet relief. Wilhelm Hofmeister stood among them, hands empty, watching American trucks arrive to transport prisoners to processing centers. GMC trucks. Naturally. The irony was absolute. Even in defeat, the Americans moved with the mechanical efficiency of an industrial process. Trucks arrived on schedule. Prisoners were loaded in organized groups. Manifests were checked. The whole operation ran with smooth precision. Because that's what America had done, Wilhelm realized. They'd industrialized war itself. Not just the production of weapons, but the entire enterprise. Logistics, transportation, even prisoner processing, all reduced to repeatable procedures, standardized protocol systems that worked, regardless of who operated them. Dieter Wolfram appeared beside him, his uniform torn and stained, his face gaunt from months of inadequate rations. The boy who'd been 19 in August was now 20, aged far beyond those months. "They're loading us into the trucks," Dieter said quietly. "I know. The same trucks we've been studying for 8 months." "Yes." Dieter was silent for a moment. "Is it wrong that I'm grateful they're reliable?" Wilhelm almost smiled. "No, it's practical. We might as well appreciate good engineering even if it belongs to our captors." They climbed into the back of a GMC. Wilhelm noted the production number automatically, 231847, nearly 100,000 units later than the first one they'd captured, and sat on the wooden benches as the truck filled with German prisoners. The convoy rolled east toward a prisoner of war camp near Koblenz. Wilhelm watched the countryside pass through gaps in the canvas. Destroyed villages, burned fields, abandoned German vehicles broken down and left behind during the long retreat, and everywhere American trucks. Moving supplies forward, bringing prisoners back, maintaining the endless flow of men and materiel that characterized American operations. The POW camp occupied what had once been a Wehrmacht training facility. Ironic, Wilhelm thought that they'd be imprisoned in a place designed to prepare German soldiers for war. Processing was remarkably organized, names recorded, personal effects inventoried, medical screening, barracks assignment. The whole procedure took less than 3 hours for several hundred men. Industrial efficiency applied to human beings. Wilhelm was assigned to Barracks 7 with 40 other men. He'd just claimed a bunk near the window when a voice called from the doorway. "Any mechanics in here?" An American sergeant stood there, clipboard in hand. Late 30s, Wilhelm guessed. Competent bearing. The kind of NCO who'd been doing this work long before the war. Several hands went up, including Wilhelm's. The sergeant walked down the barracks, checking faces against some internal criteria. He stopped at Wilhelm's bunk. "You look older than most of these kids. How long you been working on vehicles?" Wilhelm's English was adequate. He'd studied it before the war, and 8 months of examining American manuals had improved it considerably. 15 years. 4 years as engineer at Opel, before the war. The sergeant's eyebrows rose. "Engineer, not just a mechanic. Mechanical engineer, specialized in production efficiency and vehicle design." "Staff Sergeant Raymond Callahan," the American said, extending his hand. "Motor pool supervisor. We got about 200 trucks that need maintenance, maybe 20 mechanics who know what they're doing." "Math don't work. You work on GMC trucks before." Wilhelm shook the offered hand. "Yes, we captured several. I maintained them for 8 months. Good enough. You want to work in the motor pool instead of sitting around here doing nothing." Wilhelm glanced at Dieter, who'd been listening. The young soldier nodded fractionally. Better to work than to sit idle. "Yes, Sergeant." "Callahan. Just call me Callahan." The sergeant made a note. "Report to the motor pool tomorrow, 0600. Don't be late." The next morning, Wilhelm walked through the camp gates, accompanied by a guard, but still walking free to the motor pool on the facility's south side. What he found there made him stop and stare. Rows of GMC trucks. Dozens of them, perhaps 100, parked in organized lines. Beyond them, Dodge trucks, Jeeps, larger vehicles Wilhelm didn't recognize, all American, all standardized. Callahan found him standing there. "Impressive, right?" the sergeant said. "Yes," Wilhelm admitted. "This ain't even that many. You should see the depot in Antwerp. Thousands of trucks, as far as you can see." Callahan gestured toward the motor pool office. "Come on, let me show you what we're dealing with." The office was organized chaos. Maintenance schedules on one wall, parts inventory on another, a large map showing vehicle locations. Callahan pulled out a thick folder. "These are our current maintenance requirements. We're behind schedule on damn near everything. War's winding down, but these trucks still need service." Wilhelm scanned the lists. Oil changes, filter replacements, brake adjustments, tire rotations, routine maintenance that kept vehicles operational. Nothing complex, just systematic regular service. "You have the manuals?" Wilhelm asked. Callahan pointed to a shelf lined with identical blue binders. "One manual covers all the GMC models. Same procedures, same specs. Makes it simple." Simple. The Americans had built their entire system on simplicity. I can start immediately, Wilhelm said. Callahan assigned Wilhelm to a team with 2 American soldiers, Privates Johnson and Martinez, working on routine maintenance. The work was straightforward. Oil changes, filter replacements, greasing, basic inspections. Wilhelm changed the oil on his first truck in 11 minutes. Private Johnson, who'd been a farm equipment mechanic in Iowa before the war, finished his in 12. Private Martinez, who'd never touched a vehicle before joining the Army 10 months ago, took 17 minutes but completed the job correctly. 17 minutes, for someone with less than a year of training. Wilhelm thought about the Opel oil change procedure. 45 minutes minimum, requiring specialized tools, assuming trained mechanics. By midday, they'd serviced 15 trucks. At break, Callahan offered Wilhelm a cigarette. "Can I ask you something?" Callahan said. "Of course." "You Germans, you build beautiful machines." "Mercedes, BMW, incredible engineering. I've seen some of your stuff. Really impressive work." He paused. "So, why'd you lose?" Wilhelm had been asked this question 100 times, but never by an American so directly, with genuine curiosity rather than triumphalism. "Because beautiful doesn't win wars," Wilhelm said slowly. "Good enough in overwhelming numbers does." Callahan nodded thoughtfully. Yeah, that tracks." He gestured at the motor pool. "You want to know something? These trucks. They're not complicated. Commercial truck technology barely modified it for military use. The engines, commercial design. Transmissions, commercial. We just made them rugged and produced them in massive quantities." "How many total?" "GMC alone, over 560,000 of these CCKW models. Then you got Dodge, Studebaker, International, Harvester, Ford, all building similar trucks to similar specs." Callahan did some mental math. "Probably 2.5 million military trucks total, maybe more." 2.5 million. Wilhelm had heard estimates before, but having it confirmed by someone who actually knew the numbers made it real in a new way. "Germany produced perhaps 150,000 trucks during the entire war," Wilhelm said quietly. "All types, all manufacturers." "Yeah, I heard something like that." Callahan stubbed out his cigarette. "Want to know what's funny? We could have built better trucks. More sophisticated, more refined, like yours." "Why didn't you?" "Because sophisticated breaks. Refined needs specialists to maintain. We couldn't train millions of soldiers to be expert mechanics, so we designed trucks that didn't need expert mechanics." He stood stretched. "Come on, let me show you something." Callahan led Wilhelm to a large GMC truck that sat apart from the others, partially disassembled. 2 soldiers, neither older than 22, worked on the engine with calm efficiency. They followed a procedure card, checking each step using standard tools from a standard toolkit. Wilhelm watched for 20 minutes. The soldiers removed the cylinder head, inspected the valves, checked tolerances, began reassembly. Their movements weren't the polished expertise of master mechanics, but they were competent, methodical, effective. "How long for the complete overhaul?" Wilhelm asked. 8 hours, 2-man team. Could do it faster if we had to, but that's the standard schedule. An Opel engine overhaul requires factory equipment and 3 days minimum." Callahan nodded. "That's what I figured. See, that's the difference right there. You designed for factory conditions. We designed for a muddy field in France with a couple of farm boys who got 2 weeks of training. We built for the army. We had not the army we wished we had." Wilhelm watched the soldiers work, understanding something fundamental. It wasn't that American engineers were better or worse than German engineers. They'd simply solved a different problem. "Your engineering isn't superior to ours," Wilhelm said. "It's just appropriate for different circumstances." "Yeah, well, our circumstances involved fighting a war across 3 continents with an army of guys who were selling insurance or farming or working in factories a year before." Callahan pulled out another cigarette. "We built for reality. You built for ideals." That night, Wilhelm lay in his bunk thinking about the day, about procedures designed for simplicity, about systems that worked because they assumed incompetence rather than expertise. The days turned into weeks. Wilhelm settled into a routine. The work was satisfying, simple, repetitive, but with tangible results. Trucks that didn't run became trucks that did. Dieter joined the motor pool team in May. Hauptmann Schneider was there too, several other German mechanics. They worked alongside American soldiers, maintaining the vehicles that had defeated them, learning procedures they'd spent months trying to counter. One evening in early June, as the summer light stretched long across the camp, Callahan found Wilhelm cleaning tools after the day's work. "You're good at this," the American sergeant said. "Better than good. You think about things differently than most mechanics." "I was trained as an engineer. I see systems, not just components." "Yeah, I noticed." Callahan sat on a workbench. Can I ask you something personal? Wilhelm nodded. What are you going to do after all this, when you go home? Wilhelm hadn't thought much about after. The future seemed uncertain. I suppose I'll look for work, if there's any work to be found. Germany will need rebuilding. With American trucks, Callahan said, not unkindly. Hauling materials, moving equipment. Same trucks you've been maintaining here. Yes, I suppose so. You could do worse than learning everything you can about them now. When you get home, that knowledge will be valuable. The war in Europe ended officially on May 8th. The news spread through the camp with muted relief rather than celebration. For the German prisoners, it meant certainty they were defeated completely and finally. For Wilhelm, it meant the end of one thing and the beginning of something else, though he couldn't yet see what. Repatriation began in November. The process was slow, bureaucratic. Wilhelm's name came up on a transport list for November 12th, destination Stuttgart, or what remained of it. The night before he left the motor pool team, German and American both gathered for an informal farewell. Callahan produced a bottle of bourbon from somewhere. You did good work here, Wilhelm, Callahan said. Damn good work. Thank you, Callahan. You going to be okay? Back in Germany? Wilhelm thought about Stuttgart, wondered what he'd find there. I don't know, but I know more now than I did 8 months ago. Yeah, what do you know? That good enough is sometimes better than perfect. That systems beat components. That designing for reality beats designing for ideals. Wilhelm raised his cup. That sometimes the best teachers are the ones who defeat you. They drank to that American and German alike, victor and vanquished, united by the understanding that came from working together on machines that didn't care about politics or nationality. The next morning, Wilhelm boarded a truck, a GMC naturally, for the first leg of his journey home. Dieter came with him and Schneider and a dozen other men from Stuttgart. Stuttgart was worse than Wilhelm had imagined. 80% destroyed. The Opel plant where he'd worked was a ruin of twisted metal and broken concrete. His apartment building was gone, simply gone. But in the town square, reconstruction was already beginning, and the trucks hauling materials were GMC trucks. A man in civilian clothes approached. Mid-50s, thin from wartime privations, but with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. My name is Klaus Brenner. I'm organizing reconstruction efforts for the Stuttgart region. I heard you recently returned from a POW camp where you worked on American vehicles. Yes, for 7 months. We need people with that knowledge. The Americans are providing trucks for reconstruction, but we need mechanics who can maintain them. There's a position open at Frankfurt Reconstruction Depot. Motor pool supervisor. Wilhelm took the offered card. When do I start? 3 months later, March 1946. Wilhelm stood in the Frankfurt depot, watching young German men boys, really too young to have fought, but old enough to work as they learned to maintain American vehicles. Wilhelm taught them the procedures he'd learned, simple steps, clear instructions, standardized methods. The procedures worked regardless of mechanical aptitude. And slowly watching them learn, Wilhelm began to understand what Callahan had meant. These young men represented Germany's future. They would rebuild the country, reconstruct the industry, and they were learning using American methods, American systems, American philosophy. Not because American ways were inherently superior, but because American ways had worked and Germany's ways had failed, and that failure had to be acknowledged before anything could be rebuilt properly. By June 1947, Wilhelm was training 20 students in a converted warehouse that served as both classroom and workshop. He'd developed a curriculum based on American maintenance manuals adapted for German students, teaching not just specific procedures but the philosophy behind them. Design for simplicity, standardize ruthlessly, build systems that work with ordinary people. One afternoon, a young student named Peter raised his hand. Herr Hofmeister, why do we study American vehicles so carefully? Why not focus on rebuilding German automotive engineering? Wilhelm set down the manual he'd been referencing. Because they teach us lessons we couldn't learn from victory, Wilhelm said. Before the war, we believed German engineering was superior. We believed quality would overcome quantity. We believed precision would triumph over mass production. He gestured at the GMC truck they'd been working on. We were wrong, on all 3 counts. But German engineering is superior. In some ways, yes, in attention to detail, in refinement, in sophistication. But superior for what purpose? Wilhelm walked to the truck. This truck isn't a masterpiece of engineering. It's crude, simple. But it won the war because there were hundreds of thousands of them because they all used the same parts, because any soldier could drive them, because any mechanic could fix them. The students were quiet, listening.
The genius wasn't in making a perfect truck. It was in making a good enough truck that could be produced in overwhelming numbers, maintained by ordinary people, and operated under terrible conditions. That was the strategic requirement. American engineers understood it. We didn't. He looked at his students. We're not studying American vehicles to copy them exactly. We're studying them to learn how to think differently, how to design for reality instead of ideals, how to build systems that work with the resources and people we actually have. The years passed. Wilhelm's depot grew. His reputation spread. By 1953, he was consulting for Mercedes-Benz, helping them integrate mass production techniques with traditional German precision. By 1956, he'd advised Volkswagen on standardization procedures that would make the Beetle one of the most successfully mass-produced vehicles in history. October 15, 1967, Stuttgart Automotive Museum opening ceremony.
Wilhelm Hofmeister, now 58 years old, retired from active consulting, but still respected in German automotive circles, stood on the museum stage, looking out at an audience of engineers, manufacturers, historians, and students. Beside him on the display floor sat two trucks, a GMC CCKW and an Opel Blitz, restored to pristine condition, representing two philosophies of engineering. 23 years ago, Wilhelm began, I examined a captured American truck. A simple truck. A crude truck by our standards. I was 35 years old, a trained engineer, and I thought I understood how vehicles should be designed. He paused, looking at the GMC. That truck taught me I was wrong. Not about technical specifications or engineering principles, but about something more fundamental, what design actually means in context of purpose. Wilhelm walked to the GMC. Design for your constraints. We had skilled workers and sophisticated manufacturing. They had millions of conscripts and vast industrial capacity. We designed for specialists. They designed for every man. Both approaches were valid, but only one matched the strategic reality of total war. He moved to the Opel Blitz. System beats component. Our trucks were individually superior in many ways, more efficient, more refined, better handling. But their logistics system was infinitely superior, standardized, interchangeable, scalable. We optimized components. They optimized systems. Back to the GMC. Replaceability is strength, not weakness. We built irreplaceable specialists vehicles that required expert care and skilled operators. They built replaceable standards vehicles that any depot could supply and any soldier could drive. We thought irreplaceability meant value. They understood that in war replaceability means sustainability. Wilhelm turned to face the audience. 560,000 of these GMC trucks were built. They didn't just win a war. They taught us how to think differently about engineering, about production, about the relationship between design and purpose. Those lessons, painful as they were to learn, helped rebuild German industry into what it is today. He saw Dieter in the audience, Dieter Wolfram, now 42, an executive at Volkswagen. We lost the war, but we gained knowledge. Knowledge about industrial efficiency, about mass production, about designing for reality rather than ideals. That knowledge, combined with our traditional precision and craftsmanship, has created something new, something that honors both approaches. Wilhelm stepped down from the stage to polite applause, but he wasn't listening. He was walking to the GMC, standing before it one more time. Dieter appeared beside him. Erinnerst du dich? Dieter asked. Remember August 17th, 1944, the day I learned we'd already lost. The day we started learning how to win differently. Behind them, visitors moved through the museum. Young engineering students studied the GMC's engine, noting its simplicity, its accessibility. They would carry these observations into their own careers, building on what failure had taught. Wilhelm nodded once, acknowledgement, gratitude, farewell, and walked toward the exit. The future was waiting. And this time, they would be ready for it.